So, welcome everyone to another episode of Sunday School for Misfits, season 2, the Church Girl series. And I'm so happy today to have somebody who I think is super inspiring as a younger woman than me, my friend, my sister's friend, a community leader, an entrepreneur, an author, a producer of Offspring.
Yes, I love that.
Romanah Buchanan is with us today. Mon, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Sal. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so glad that you've had time. Notably, you have had a baby recently, so I don't take it
Yes.
for granted that
Yeah.
you have found time to sit with me today and talk about these themes of womanhood and our bodies and dance
Yeah.
and all that you do. I really, really appreciate it. And when I was thinking about this new season and the
Mm.
conversations I wanted to have about what we learn about our bodies and ourselves as women growing up in the church, I
Yeah.
thought of you immediately because I was thinking about how in your own work, in your own
Yeah.
ministry, you do something that I think is quite revolutionary in the way that
Yeah.
you bring women into an embrace of their embodiment.
Hmm.
And I don't know whether for you, you take that for granted, but for me, it's quite revolutionary.
Really?
And particularly because in my experience, I grew up in like doing praise dance.
Yes.
So praise, you have your flags and your
Yeah,
ribbons
your long
and you have
skirt.
your long skirts and the
Yeah.
white and it's all very modest and it's all very holy and it's all about
Yeah.
your body being like used for worship.
Covered and stuff.
And what
Yeah.
I'm amazed about what you do is that you do that, but you also allow women to experience all other kinds of dance,
Yeah.
even a sensual kind of dance, which for me, I
Mm.
just want to talk all through,
Okay.
but partly through your own journey. So when you think about your relationship of dance and faith, which
Yeah.
one of those things came first in your own journey?
Oh, that's such a good question. It definitely was. It definitely was the dance first. I danced ever since I was 6. My mum enrolled me into a dance class,
Mm,
and it was nothing to do with church. It was nothing to do with God, nothing to do with faith. I was just dancing. So ballet, tap, jazz, modern, hip hop, every single style I was training in.
amazing.
And it was only until I remember sitting down and saying to my mom, I think I was about 16, and I said, I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere with dancing. Like, I've got lots of trophies, lots of awards, traveled up and down the country, but I still don't feel a sense of fulfillment.
Mm.
And she was like, "You will only feel that when you give your gift back to God." And at the time, I was thinking, "What is this woman talking about? Give your gift back to God? Like, what does that look like?" So I remember saying to her, "Mom, what do you mean?" And she was like, literally giving the gift of dance back to him. So weirdly, we had that conversation, and then I saw an opening for Midnight Oil. They were looking for dancers. You know Midnight Oil really well.
Yeah, Seth Pinnock.
Yeah, the GOAT, Seth the GOAT. So they put out an ad, but the applications were closed for dancers. And I said, Mom, look, this has come up. It looks really good. Blah, blah, blah. Should I apply? But the applications are closed. And she was like, listen, apply anyway. You just never know. Like, if it's for you, they'll reopen the applications. And
And was that
funnily
and
enough,
that
that's
and
what they
was
did.
that and was that the first time that you had thought about dancing in a Christian context?
Yes, the very first time on a big platform. I mean,
Wow.
my auntie had asked me to dance at her baptism before, but I
Mm,
was young, so I didn't really understand the concept of what I was doing.
yeah.
But Midnight Oil was the first time I had danced and felt the presence of God. So what happened was I got in, went to this conference, danced. First time I did praise dance and literally had my life changed in that
Wow.
moment. It was a weekend conference. On the last day of the conference, I came home and I was like, I need to get baptized. And Sal, it wasn't a case of I'm happy to wait. I literally was like, I need to get baptized next week. Like, when is the next opening for that pool? It needs me there.
Mm.
So I remember going to
And
my
hold on,
church.
one. Did you grow up going to church like every week? Was that
I
your
did.
experience?
I did, but I fell off
Mm,
massively. You know, like once you become a teenager and you kind of have
yeah.
one life, I just fell off. Like my mom used to ask me to come, and I just used to be like, "Oh no, I'm not really interested in going."
Mm,
So it wasn't. I didn't have a relationship with God for myself. I knew I was obviously of church, and I'd grew up in church, but I wasn't passionate about God for myself. And it was only until that point where I heard God clearly telling me the time is now. And then a week after that conference, I was baptized. Literally, the turnaround time was that quick.
wow.
Um, and then everything just happened so quickly. After I was baptized, me and my mum were like, okay, what next? And I said, well, I'd love to open up a dance company like in the future. And my mom said, well, why in the future? Why not now?
Was
And I was
that a
like, well,
dream that you had before you got baptized?
yeah, I'd always
Okay.
wanted to have my own establishment. I didn't really know why, but I'd always wanted to. I put it on my vision board when I was about 12, and it
Who
stayed
does
on
that?
there since. I know, who does that?
It's
To
amazing.
me, that's normal, but when people say, "Mom, do you realize that's actually not normal at 12 years old to say you want your own establishment?" It's not. Um, so yeah, we sat at my mom's breakfast table, and she actually got the revelation for the name Eloquent. And then we were just like, okay, let's rent out a space, let's invite kids to come, and let's do it. So from getting baptized, Eloquent was birthed from that decision to give my life to God.
Mm, that is so incredible. And in a way, I kind of like that this was a dream for you, like since you
Yeah,
were 12. But then it's like this moment comes where like it's really now is the right time now, like a
yeah.
catalyst moment happens and it's like, okay, the dream's been there and it's like hovering around, but it's now is the time when it has to
Time is
be
now. Yeah.
to be born. And that's really incredible. And how did you even decide where to do it? Were you just looking for any space, or was there a
So,
particular kind of group of people you really wanted to serve with the dance company?
so I'm going to be controversial here. I know I can be transparent on this
Go for
podcast,
it.
but what's really interesting is I was in a church at the time, and the church that I got baptized at, I first went to the church leaders and said, "Look, I have a burning desire to start a dance business, dance ministry, whatever it looks like. I just want to start." Me and my mom are doing it together. We've got the name, we've heard the name clearly from God. And can we use the church space to do it? Can we hire out a space on a weeknight or whatever?
Mm.
Charge this much, people come, learn to dance, and we'll take it from there. And the leaders at the church at the time said to me, "Oh, we need to take this to the board and decide on this, and we'll come back to you with a decision." So I said, "Okay, what's the turnaround time on the decision?" They're like, "Oh, just give us some time. It'll be a couple of weeks." I said, "Okay, that's fine. I can wait." So Sal, I'm waiting some weeks now, and I'm a very impatient person. I'm waiting some weeks, and I'm still waiting. Those weeks turned into months,
Mm.
and those months became more months, and
Wow.
I'm pestering the leaders, and I'm saying, "Guys, is there a decision? Because, we're waiting." And they finally came back and said, "You can do it, but the name that you say God has given to you, that's not what it will be called. It will be called Our Church, then Dance Ministry after that." And me and my mom kind of looked at each other and we were like, "But
Wow.
that's not what God has given to us. Like, God has clearly given to us Eloquent Praise Dance Company. That is it. And we don't want to compromise on that because we've heard clearly from the Lord." And they said, "Well, if it's not going to be called what we want it to be called, then you can't use here." And I'm waiting months for this decision, Sal. So I'm screwing.
Of
I'm
course.
17. I don't really understand how the church systems work in that sense. But I just remember saying, right, I'm not waiting any longer. I'm not asking for their building. I'm going to go and find a dance studio and rent that. And then we did, and we launched it a week after. But I think that was the first hurdle for me of, I
Mm.
don't want to say church hurt, but just realizing how things work behind the scenes and just going,
Yeah.
okay, that's
Mm, mm,
interesting.
mm, mm, mm. And I mean, as you say that, I'm just vexed. I
Yeah,
mean, also, Eloquent was born anyway,
yeah.
despite that, but it kind of makes me think a whole range of thoughts.
Mhm.
The first thing being that kind of power play of we're going to name the thing that you want to
Yes,
create. Like that is like so problematic. The
very.
fact that you had a very clear sense, like in your
Mhm.
heart, in your hearts, in your spirits, that you had a name you wanted for it, that
Yeah.
you felt God had given you, and that they're denying you the right to call it that. Like all these little power plays, just really get on my nerves because
You know what's
it's the
interesting,
opposite of what
Sal?
community really should be about.
It really is. And at the time, because I was so young, I missed it. I
Of
didn't I didn't
course.
I didn't see it. And obviously I continued to serve at this church. And I just thought, oh well, we're gonna launch here. But I think the turning point for me, in a church environment, so to speak, was they asked me to come and minister. I think this was before I got baptized actually. They asked me to come and minister because they knew I danced. And obviously, being in a professional dance world is very different to dancing in church. So I came with my dance costume. It was glittery, so it was very tight fitting. It was just like everything that the church didn't want to see. I remember them saying to me, "You need to change the outfit." And I said, "Okay, cool." Like I was just adjusting. But when I danced, my top had fell down slightly. And as a dancer, you are trained to fix it
And carry
while
on.
you're dancing and carry on. So that's what I did. And I remember finishing the performance and nobody clapped. I think I was about 15 at the time. No one clapped. And I
Gosh.
was like, okay. I ran off the stage crying and I said to Mum, what happened?
Mom.
And she said, your top fell down a little bit and obviously your bra strap was on show. And I was like, but Mum, we just carry on. And she was like, yeah, but it seems like we've upset a couple of people. And I remember a couple of people coming up to me after the service and saying, that dance was really inappropriate. Like, did nobody check this dance for you before you went onto stage? And I remember saying, well, why was it inappropriate? You were doing split leaps, split jumps, there were a couple of backflips in there. And that kind of dancing is enticing to an audience of, husbands were there with their wives. It just wasn't appropriate. And I really remembered that conversation, Sal.
Oh, man.
And when I say it damaged my view of how dance could sit in church. And I think this is what fueled my fire. From then, I said to myself, when we perform in church, I'm going to have an array of acrobats. They're going to be professionally trained like ballerinas to leap. They're going to be flexible. They're going to do hip hop. I'm going to smash the boundaries just because of how that one experience shattered my confidence of dancing in church again.
Man, I mean, there's so many things that I just want to sit with in what you just said. And thank you for
Yeah.
sharing the story. Because as you describe it, I'm feeling it in my body. There's that feeling of being a 15-year-old girl, and I can't even imagine what it's like to be in that church space and to give your gift.
Yeah.
And for a bra strap, people not clapping and
Yeah.
making comments for a bra strap.
It's crazy.
For a shoulder, for a sexy shoulder.
Yes. Yes.
I really just cannot with that whole thing of like why women's bodies are a problem. It's not women's bodies that are the problem. If you have a problem with the shoulder at church, it's not the woman that's the problem.
Yes.
It's the way you've sexualized her that's a problem, and that's something you need to go and take to Jesus. It's not for the 15-year-old girl to feel shame because you have a thing for shoulders. And that to me is just crazy. But also so typical, like I can imagine it, I can imagine it. And all the rules that came with being a woman at church. Like I've even heard no open toe shoes, because someone might have a foot fetish. No one says that, but that when you get older, you realize, oh, that's why you think that. Or, I mean, the armpits thing, I'm kind of like, I don't like looking at armpits. So I don't mind if you have like a no sleeveless tops thing, because I'm just like, armpits are not really that great to look at, but not that I'm saying we should show things that are nice to look at, just in general. I can understand that.
Are, right?
Exactly, but it's kind of the long list of requirements. And the way that women are made responsible for how men sexualize them. Like I mentioned this in the first episode, like how when I was younger, I grew up wearing really baggy clothes, like middle-aged women's clothes at like 15, 16 growing up, because I was so concerned about how people would see my body. Because I grew up in a world where you got to think about people's husbands, people, younger men around you. You're responsible for how they see you. So you've got to make sure that you are wearing baggy clothes that's not showing anything of your body. And you internalize that messaging as a young woman. And there's so much of that to unpack and undo as you get older. But it feels like the movement of the body is even more provocative for them. Like it's not even just being in a body; it's the way the body moves.
The dance,
that really just presses some buttons.
Sal, I've upset a lot of people in churches in Birmingham just because of eloquent dance. I've upset a hell of a lot of people to the point where I've had to just become comfortable that I've upset people. And when I go to certain church conferences or certain arenas now, before when we were first launching Eloquent, a church would say, "Can you come and perform?" And it would be yes, it'd be an opportunity for the dancers. But now I'm very, very cautious about where we go to dance, where we go to perform, where we go to minister, because I've sent young people to certain environments and had girls in floods of tears because of how they've been treated. Not at a hippodrome, not at the Mac Theatre, at church. It's been, I've had instances where I remember sending a group of 6 young girls to dance at Bethel Convention Centre. There was an event on there, and one of them FaceTimed me literally in tears because I told them to put a red lip on, stage makeup, sort
Yeah,
yourselves
yeah,
out.
yeah.
Red lip, bit of eyeshadow, lift your face. That's just performers' requirements.
Mm.
They were ridiculed for wearing a red lipstick.
Wow,
And I wasn't there at the
no.
time. I was on holiday. And they FaceTimed me in tears, man. And we were told to take the red lipstick off. They were told that it's this and it's that. And it's these types of things that have now caused us to be really cautious about what churches you're going to go and minister at, because how are you going to be embraced? How are you going to be treated? And it is still happening now, and it's 2022. It's yeah, it's one I'm really passionate about talking about, just because it's
It's
so
yeah.
controversial.
It's just so sad. And this is the point you've made is right, is that these girls will perform in all kinds of places and be welcomed and celebrated
This is it.
and cheered on. But you go
Mhm.
to a church and you're being shamed and ridiculed
Yeah,
and embarrassed.
yeah,
And that is to me just absolutely disgraceful. Like
yeah. It's
there's no other
unacceptable.
way to say it. It's disgraceful.
Mm.
And what are these young girls now learning about what God is like from how these Christians are treating them? You know, it's so it makes me mad. It really makes me mad. Have you ever felt personally conflicted in yourself? Or is it for you quite a simple connection between your faith and dance and expression?
Do you know what, Sal? I really struggled when I started to dance in a heel. And
Mm.
when I say really struggled, it was um conversations. It was my husband now, but he was my fiance at the time, and I used to dance in a heel. Obviously, as a professional dancer, you have to be able to dance in heels. When you
Yes.
go to an audition in London, they don't want to see you in trainers. They want to see you in a stiletto heel that's a certain height, because you should be well versed in dancing in a heel. There's no ifs or buts. So in the dance industry, I'd say once you get to about 16, maybe 17, you need to be starting to train in a heel regularly. So when auditions come up, you're ready.
Mm.
So I remember in the midst of lockdown, I was doing a lot of heels training, and it was videos that needed to be posted because now your Instagram is your CV.
Yes.
And I remember taking some classes, and I said to my fiance, I don't want to post this because I'm just not sure. Like, I'm battling here with, obviously, I'm a professional dancer. I have to showcase certain content on my page,
Yes.
but I'm in a heel here, and does it go against everything that I stand for? And I remember him saying to me, "By whose rule book? Like, whose rule book are you defining this by?" Kind of thing. Like, who's setting the rule for what you're trying to judge yourself by? And I
Mm.
just thought, wow, because obviously everybody knows that I'm a Christian. I love God. I'm passionate about God, but I'm dancing, quite provocatively when it's time to be in a heel. And so when I say I battled with it, I really battled with it to a place where I had to become comfortable in me first
Mm,
before I could
mm.
showcase me dancing in a heel or me dancing quite sexy or sassy.
Yeah.
Um, and then I had to liken it to musicians will be on the stage on a Sunday and give their gift to God. But then I've seen musicians who are in church backing artists for S2E2,
Mm.
Stormzy, Gets. It's the same parallel,
Yeah.
but it's just not movement.
Mm.
So it's received differently.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember having not an argument, but quite a heated discussion with one pastor about this, because he was saying, what you posted, the heels video, my daughter's seen it, and I didn't feel comfortable knowing that you're a woman of faith. And I said, well, you've got musicians on your stage who I've seen perform
Oops.
with Sam Smith. So I went there. I absolutely went there, and I said, the same way I can give my gift in church is the same way I have to apply myself professionally because that is my career.
Yes.
So if I sit here and wait for gospel artists to call my phone, I'll be broke.
You won't
No
be
mortgage to pay
eating.
for.
And when that cost of living crisis hits those electricity
Hits.
bills.
So that part. But it was a real battle for me. I really struggled. I really, really struggled.
Mm-mm. It's a really interesting comparison you make with musicians and
Yeah.
that, because I think we do accept different standards
Mhm.
for what we see. Especially, and maybe there's a gender element to it, like what we think women,
Potentially,
what we
yeah.
think is appropriate for women to do with their bodies and in which
Yeah.
spaces we think women should be going,
Mhm.
versus whether we're happy for men to venture into those spaces. And particularly
Yeah.
when we have this idea about certain spaces being sacred spaces, other spaces being
Mhm.
secular spaces, who gets to be in what space and doing what. Like,
Exactly.
I think all of that is so playing out so much in those
Yeah.
presumptions. But it really makes me think a lot. I mean, and I think the thing that I think is probably a challenge, and I don't know whether you feel this, is
Mhm.
that you are both like a woman in your own right,
Yeah.
discovering yourself, growing in your gifts as a professional dancer, as a teacher, building
Mhm.
all the things you're building. And you have a lot of younger women around you looking to you as
Yeah.
a role model, while you're also coming into yourself
Yeah.
and pushing boundaries for them as well as for you. Do you ever feel a sense of how do you hold that kind of
Yeah.
responsibility, that pressure? Because I hear some of that in what you're saying, is that you're
Yeah.
aware that you're doing this
People
for
are
younger women,
watching.
but they're also watching you as well, and
Yeah.
as you grow into your full self.
Do you know what's really interesting, Sal? Working with young people, I've found to make when we're training to make our space a safe space where you can just be yourself.
Mm.
So I know my girls like to listen to Bashment. I know they like to twerk. I know they like to brook out when they want to. They like to do all of those things. And I've had to have a conversation where I've said, I think that is absolutely fine, depending on where you are and how you carrying yourself.
Mm.
So I've had this thing where when we're in the studio, you can do and dance however you wanna, because I want you to feel here like you can express all elements of you.
Yeah.
So they'll get the opportunity to put on Cardi B as long as it's clean. That's my only thing. Just make sure it's clean. And they just do what they want to do. But
Mm.
you know, the freedom in watching them act like that rather than come to eloquent, feel like they need to suppress that side of them, do praise dance, do all the things we want you to do, and then you go to a party and I see a video of you and I'm like, whoa, who's that
Mm,
person?
mm, mm, mm.
I've said to them, I never want to see that mismatch. So while you're here, play whatever song you want to play as long as it's clean and just feel free to move.
Yeah.
And then in that environment, then we can have a discussion about, would you feel comfortable to do that at a party? Would you feel comfortable to do that in your relationship? And then we start to lead the conversation certain places. But I think a big eye opener for me was learning to dance in a heel, publicizing it and stuff related to me in this season of celibacy and the church encouraging that no sex till marriage, no sex till marriage. And then the moment you get married, please your husband.
Mm.
The two parallels to that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was kind of relating to praise dance, long skirts, long skirts. Don't show us that you're sassy. But the moment you're married, be sassy
Yeah,
immediately.
yeah, yeah. Get the heels out.
Get the heel out. And it was like, I challenged the idea of that because how can you suppress something for so long and then all of a sudden expect it to be activated?
Yeah, exactly.
So I started to put the heel on and was like, listen, I've got a fiance, I'm engaged, I'm going to be a wife soon. I want to hold down my husband. So I have to grow and feed my femininity, embrace my womanhood just as much as I would my faith or my career or anything
Mm.
like that, to feel comfortable in what I can bring to the table, if that
Yeah,
makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Instead of suppressing it and then feeling like it's a switch that you can just switch on. I
Yeah.
know I've gone off on a tangent,
No,
but
no, no. It's all
necessary.
interconnected, because one of the things that I don't know where I heard you say this, whether you said this to me or to in an interview or something, but you talked
Mhm.
about how dancing gives you that space to be a
Yeah,
sensual person, to be in touch with your sensuality as a woman,
yeah.
and particularly dancing in heels and doing
Mhm.
some sexy dancing, and how important that is for just
Yeah,
like for feeling your full self as a woman. And I think
Mhm.
that is so important because, as you say, and I think this all the time, and I don't know how we're going to get out of this, but I think we
Yeah.
often have the only kind of way we're taught to deal with our sexuality is to suppress it
Yes.
until the moment of marriage.
Yeah.
And that for me is a fundamentally unhealthy way of living. And I also just
Absolutely.
think it's not viable. It just doesn't work. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't happen
Yes.
that way. Like, you actually are going to leak somewhere, like, because you can't suppress that
100%.
forever. So it's either going to leak in unhealthy ways,
Yeah.
unless you find healthy ways to express and explore that side of yourself. That's been my
Mm.
thinking on this. That's been my experience. And so I'm
Yeah.
very much for people using their agency to actually
Yeah.
find ways in which they can be sexy and sexual that are not putting
But
themselves
yeah.
at risk or putting other people at risk, but
Yeah.
I just about being grown women and just being like, this is who I am.
Yes.
And actually, I'm not a 13-year-old girl that has to be suppressing this. I'm a grown
Mhm.
woman with a
Mhm.
mortgage and a house
That's
and
great.
and a professional job. And
Yeah.
actually, that expression becomes part of who
Mhm.
you are. And I think that dance, and I see that in the way that you do dance. I think this is one of
Yeah.
the ways in which that can happen for women, is to
Yeah.
actually get in touch with their bodies for themselves, and not even just for the sake of I'm going to be married soon, but just for themselves,
Just
because
for
this is who
themselves,
you
that's
are,
right.
right?
I've seen it so much in a heels class where this is why I just love dancing in a heel. I see women come to heels classes with such low confidence, Sal. And so many different women come, different shapes and sizes, and struggle to embrace their full self, whether
Mm,
you're slim, whether you're thick, whether you're curvy, whatever it is. And I've seen how dancing in a heel can transform that.
wow.
And it's really amazing to see. This isn't even about young people now. This is just about women in general
Yeah,
feeling really empowered to share all elements of themselves.
yes.
And seeing that happen in a heel is just has been mind blowing for me because I'd never seen dance like that before. So yeah, I love a heel. I know you love a heel
Mm,
too.
I do, and you told me to come to the class, and I'm like,
Oh,
it's
you
never
need
worked in
to.
my diary. Now that my job has changed, listen,
You come in, yes. January 2023. I want to see you in my heels class,
I'm there,
definitely.
I'm so there. That there's like a version of myself, yeah, that in my head I am like this
Yeah.
amazing dancer. Normally it's like the tango. And when I watch it on Strictly, I'm like, that is my dance. The Argentine tango is my dance. I like
Is
the
it?
structure of it. I like the
Okay.
sensuality of it. It's like you
Yeah.
watch it and it's just like it just captivates you totally. And
Yes.
because I learned Spanish at uni, I'm like, I could understand the words of these songs. I'm like, this is my dance. So
Really.
I feel like I need to like manifest this in real life, in real
You
life.
know what's really interesting you saying that, Sal, because I've never danced a tango, but watching Strictly this season has kind of encouraged me to sign up to ballroom, tango, Latin, these styles that I've never done.
Yeah, I love them,
2023 will see me dabbling
This
in a bit of
I
I
love
can't
it
wait.
because
Can't wait.
I started learning the tango when I lived in London, and I
Oh,
stopped because my
amazing.
teacher was like, he really, really smelled really bad. I'm so sorry to say, but he was an older man who'd done it professionally for years.
Okay.
And I was living in like Tottenham area at the time, and I remember going
Yeah.
to this class, and I was like, I can power through because it's only like an hour. And I'm very sensitive to smell. Like, people who know me will tell you, like, if
Bothering
something
you.
smells off, I'm literally, I
You're
can't do
out of
it.
there.
And I was like, I'm gonna power through because I'm really liking this class. And I was like, you know what? After week 4, I said I can't hold my breath for long periods of time like this again. I need to breathe. And so
And
I'm
it's
gonna
quite
have to
close
not.
contact,
It's
isn't
so
it?
close.
Yeah.
I said I can't do this. It's not like salsa. You can kind of just like do
Yeah,
this thing
yeah.
here.
That's hilarious. So you stopped the class?
I'd stopped the class, but I was really enjoying
Right.
it because it's so it's got the freedom in it, but it's also
Yeah.
got the structure. It's quite close, so you're kind
Mhm.
of. It was also for me really good to let go, to get out of my head, and to not be in
Yeah.
charge
And was
of
it
what's
is it's
happening.
partner work, isn't it,
It
tango?
is, it
Yeah,
is,
okay.
it is.
I'm gonna see if they do
But
some
I
dance.
really enjoyed it a lot. I really, really did. So it's in my goals to
Start that
find a
again.
tango class, and I think Birmingham they might have some actually in next year. But I need to
Yeah, I'm
get
gonna have
onto
a
my
look.
tango again. It's just so great. Dancing is just so good.
I'd love to add tango to you just got me thinking tango to the weekly schedule at my dance
Mm.
studio. I have to look into it, see if I can find any teachers to bring it
And the
to us.
difficulty is the partner work because you need to have enough men and women, or at least
Right,
need
to
to have enough
match.
people to
Okay.
lead.
Mhm.
But And that's also the thing where I'm like, should I bring a man with me to do this lesson so that I'm guaranteed
Yeah,
to have someone who smells
interesting.
decent? But then even when you bring a partner, they still make you change round. That's the
Oh, do
thing.
they?
When I've done salsa before, they've definitely made you change partners.
Just to get comfortable
Just
dancing
to,
with different
yeah, but
people,
I
yeah.
don't want to be comfortable dancing with different people. I want to dance with one man who smells good the whole time. That's all
Do I
I
have to
need.
bring a partner, Sal?
I don't need. I'm gonna have to find a man just for
Yeah,
the dance. I said
just for
find a
the
man
dance
full stop
lesson.
in general, but also mainly for this dance.
Love that.
But yeah, man, I feel like the dance question and the connecting in with your body is so important. For me, I
Yeah.
think it's dance has been the thing I did as a young girl that I really
Mhm.
enjoyed and have dabbled in it a little bit as an adult. I think for me, like, I think especially during lockdown,
Yeah.
I think that yoga was a thing that I was doing on a daily basis that I'd never done
Nice.
before. That really
Yes.
got me into my body more, into kind
Okay.
of respecting my body. And I was into the gym before
Yeah.
lockdown. So that was my thing. I never
Mhm.
really enjoyed the gym, to be fair. It was like,
I
I
hate
need
the
to do
gym.
this because it's like, I'm trying to
Yeah.
be healthier. And I did a lot of cardio in the gym. I could do a nice one on the treadmill, do some weights. Although I say do some weights, the first time I realized what actually doing weights really was when I went to the gym with Joe and Alex,
Yeah, yeah,
my
they're
sister and my
proper teaching
brother-in-law,
you.
when they were just dating. And I moved back to Birmingham, and Alex is like a gym guy. So he's like, hey, come to the gym before Sal. I'm going to reintroduce you to the gym. And that's when I realized I have not been gymming. Like, I've not been gymming at all.
You was doing
And
your version of it,
I
Sal.
was doing girl
Yeah.
gym. I was like,
Yeah.
10 kilogram weights and doing nothing serious. When
Mhm.
I went to the gym and Alex was running the schedule, I said, you know what? Yeah, I have never been to the gym until today. So, but what happened then was I got into this really, really kind of almost it was not a very helpful space in my mind with the gym,
Okay.
because it became about me trying to like create this perfect body in the gym.
Right.
And then I started watching my body for negative reasons. Where,
Right.
like, is this in the right place? Do I need to lose weight here? Do I need to add on weight there? And you
Okay.
go and then you're checking in the mirror. How do I look now? Am I seeing progress?
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
put me in a quite like it was almost like I was battling with my body rather than embracing it and engaging with it positively. And so
Okay.
when lockdown happened and I wasn't in the gym at all, I started
Mhm.
doing yoga, which I had kind of dabbled in a little bit before, but that became for me like a really positive form of
Nice.
exercise that was also allowing me to care for and respect my body as it was. And there were
Yeah.
just some really amazing ways. I used to do yoga with Adrian quite a lot on YouTube, and she has
Mhm.
such amazing positive ways of talking about the body. Because
Okay.
what's easy about yoga, I think it's probably with dance as well, with gym, is that
Mhm.
you kind of end up critiquing yourself a lot. Like
Yeah.
thinking, oh, I wish I could be more flexible. I wish I could do this more. I wish I could
Yeah.
hold more of
Especially the
this or
positions in
endure.
yoga. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. And it's so easy to get into that mindset of saying, oh, I wish my body was more like this.
Yeah.
And one thing that Adrian always says in the classes is like, first of all, she says, find your appropriate edge. Find your appropriate edge. So when you're doing an exercise, it's supposed to feel stretching, but it's not supposed to be painful.
Right.
And that becomes like a thing for life in it. Like things are
Yeah.
gonna stretch you, but it shouldn't be causing you pain. It's supposed to stretch
Mhm.
you and make you grow, but it shouldn't be painful.
Yeah.
And she always talks about when it comes to engaging with your body, like respect where you are today,
Mhm.
like respect where you are today, like commit to a regular practice and you'll see the progression. Don't get caught up critiquing
Yeah.
yourself, critiquing your body. Like hug your body, love your body, care for your body. And I don't think I knew until I started doing yoga regularly how much I didn't even pay attention to my body. Like,
Oh.
and actually yoga for me to help me to be aware of, where am I holding tension, where am I stressed,
Yeah.
where am I like anxious and it's holding
Yeah.
in my chest.
Mhm.
Have I moved my body enough today? And that movement is about flowing. It's about all the
Yeah.
energy going through my spine and my body, and it's about just ease and just
Yeah.
lightness. And I think dance, yoga, gym, whatever it can
Mhm.
have that effect on us. I think of just allowing us to be in tune with our bodies, where our bodies are at today, where we need to just care for our bodies a little bit more. Like even for me, like I've stopped working myself to the bone when I'm on my period. Like, this is something that for me has come out
Yeah,
of
good point.
like being aware of my body through yoga. It's like we go through like a monthly bleed every month.
Yeah.
And it dawned on me once, I'm here, like exhausted, major cramping.
Mm,
I'm emotionally like on the edge. I'm
yeah.
exhausted physically, and I'm trying to do the same things I do every day. And
Mm,
I said, you know what? I'm gonna work light days when my flow is heavy and I'm really on the edge. I'm gonna be kind to myself, because this is a lot that my body's going through.
So
And
I
rather
love,
than powering through like our mothers did, our mothers love to power
yeah.
through, and a lot of them did it because they had to. My
Mm,
mum had 4 kids by my age. She never had time to take half a day to sit down,
yeah.
but I get to. And I
Mm,
think that that learning to be in tune with like, what does your body need? It needs to
mm,
rest. It needs to lay in bed for 1 more hour. Not sorry if
yeah.
you've got a newborn baby, but if
Yeah.
you do,
Get
if
your
you
ass
don't,
up.
for those of us who can, like,
Yeah.
just be kind to yourself a little bit more. Not every day push through, power through. Some days just take a breath.
So that's so important because I was of that dangerous mindset of push through, power through, right up until the hour that I had rain. That had been my mindset, and
Wow.
people thought that me being pregnant would force me to slow down, and Sally was the opposite. Because I could feel myself becoming heavier and slower,
Yeah.
it's like my mind was racing and going, "But I've gotta get this done and I've gotta get that done." So, I remember being on my laptop the day I went into labor, bouncing on this yoga
Man.
ball and still sending emails. God must have been thinking, "Man,
What
what am I
what's
going to
wrong
have to
with
do to teach this woman to just chill?" So it weirdly, when I went into labor and I had rain, um, the recovery process for me was yoga.
you? Ah,
I
no
wasn't
way.
ready to fully dance yet, but I was ready to move and do something.
Yes.
So I remember signing up to the gym and saying, I'm not going to do gym because I hate the gym, but I need to just move. I
Yes.
was going to was it Ashtanga? I was going to some sort of yoga
Mm.
and I absolutely loved it. And I just remember the stigma attached to yoga, that it's
Listen,
quite it's
some other
spiritualistic and it's
religions, some
demonic.
inviting demons.
Listen, I just went into them classes, prayed myself up, and got my body moving and saw the healing that yoga gave me because I suffered with a lot of postpartum bleeding after
Mm.
my pregnancy. And I think it's because I wasn't resting. So the moment I was back on my feet, I
Mm.
was like, right, let me put a song, I'm gonna dance. And the postpartum bleeding just wasn't
Yes.
subsiding. It's supposed to
Yeah.
come to a point where it just settles and it wasn't settling. And it's funny you should say that because it was my body going, "You're not ready
You
yet.
need to just slow down.
Just sit your ass down." And now I've really learned to go in tune with what my cycle is saying. If I'm really busy,
Mm.
you're supposed to go out today. Plans
Yeah,
cancelled.
yeah,
Have
yeah,
the
yeah,
whole
yeah.
diary, just sit down. So yeah, what you're saying sounds so on point, and it literally took me to have a whole baby to learn that. So hopefully someone's listening to this and not gonna be so ears hard and
Yeah.
put those steps in place beforehand.
I mean, it's so good you said, because I was watching a video of you dancing, a recent video, and I was thinking this woman is just amazing. But would you, and this is totally random, and you don't have to
Mhm.
talk about this if you're not ready or comfortable, and we can just cut this
Yeah,
out if you're not. But would you say something about how having a baby has impacted how you see your body,
yeah,
particularly like as somebody who's very been into your body as a dancer,
yeah.
your exercise, you're doing all this stuff all the time, and
Mhm.
now you've had a baby. Like, how was being pregnant for
Yeah.
you, and after pregnancy, in terms of your relationship with your body?
That's a good question, Sal. I feel like throughout the pregnancy, I loved the bump. Like, it looks great. People embrace this bump. I had a maternity shoot. I was naked. That was really
It's
controversial as
so
well.
lovely, actually.
And,
I just want everybody to go on your Instagram and
and
just
have a
see
look
the
at that picture.
photographs. I said, listen,
Oh
Queen,
my
you
gosh,
better
Sal, the
show
amount of
your
complaints I
pregnant
got for that
body.
picture, but I didn't care. That was what I wanted in my head. I was covered in gold glitter.
It's absolutely glorious. I
Thank
thought
you.
that should be printed and put on a billboard.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
It was like black maternal,
Oh, Sal,
just
I loved
just
it.
beautiful.
I loved it. But you know what? Everyone teaches you to embrace the bump period, but you see post bump when you've
Yeah.
got
Oh,
those
listen.
stretch marks and then you've got this belly that's still there,
Yes,
but there's no
yes,
baby there.
yes.
That was really tricky because in my mind,
Mm.
people were like, "Oh man, you're a dancer, you're gonna snatch back." So when rain came and this belly was still there, I was like, said to my mom, how long? And she was like, that's you now.
Oh, Jan.
I says, Mom, what do you mean? I was horrified, Sal, with this idea of still having all pregnancy bits, but now I'm a mom. Now she's here. So
Yes,
why have I
yes.
still got stretch marks? Why am I still? I'd
Mm,
put on a lot of weight, Sal, because I was
yeah.
eating like a horse. And I had a really negative experience with looking in the mirror and going, oh my God, how am I going to get back to dance looking like this?
Wow.
What is going on here? Like, you're in baggy briefs. You had to kiss goodbye to thongs for a bit. So it was
Just a little bit.
it was such a struggle. And
Yeah.
I remember sitting down with myself and telling myself off because I'd been so hard on me. Like, hold on a second. You just carried this
You grew
a
baby
whole baby,
in your
Sal.
body, man. A whole
Yeah.
other human being.
I really had to tell myself off for how I treated myself in those
Yeah.
first 2 months of postpartum. Sal, I was rough on me, man. Really, really rough.
But I
And
see so many women do it, and this,
yeah,
can we talk about this snapback culture? That's this snapback
yeah.
culture, please, because
What
this
is
is
it?
so way off the list of things I thought we'd
I
talk
know,
about. But as
right?
I said to you, we'll get to all of these
Yeah.
things because I see this online. I've never had a baby, so I'm just watching this
Mm.
as someone who doesn't have experience of this. But
Yeah.
I always see these comments, and it happens a lot with celebrity women
Yeah.
whose only job is to look good.
Right.
Their job is to be in the gym every day, to whatever, and they
Mhm.
get paid to do all this stuff and to be in films or modeling or whatever else. And
Mhm.
your average woman whose full-time job is actually a full-time job and all these
Yeah.
other things, comparing themselves to how this celebrity woman has snapped back after
Snatchback.
having a baby, while you're trying to do this along with everything else. And I just
Yeah.
think it's so toxic as a way of thinking about women's bodies after the
Yeah.
miracle that is growing and giving birth to a
Childbirth.
child, that
Yeah.
the absolute power and magic of doing that
Mm.
is then lost in this toxic
Snatchback.
conversation
Yeah.
about, oh, but you haven't snapped back now, or
Yeah.
she snatched or snatched back.
I think people use both, Sal, which is
Okay. I'm just
yeah, people
like,
use both. Yeah.
she hasn't got, her waist is still not back to weight. And I'm like, listen,
Mm. Mm.
she just made a baby.
But Sal,
Like,
what
just
was
ridiculous
interesting is
standards.
when I first went out after having rain, I think about a week later, that's all people were saying. Man, you look great. Oh my gosh, you look great. Are you breastfeeding? Because the weight's just dropping off.
Oh
So
wow.
before people are asking, how are you?
How's
How's
your
the
health?
baby?
How's your
How is your health?
well-being?
How's you? All of those
How's your
important
mental
questions.
well-being?
Exactly. People are looking at you going, wow, the weight's dropping off, isn't it? And the conversation really shouldn't be there. It should be on all those things we just mentioned. How are you actually getting on? And the conversation really wasn't there. And this is in people that you're close with. The
Yeah.
first thought is, oh my God, you look great.
Yeah.
It's always a physical perception. And yeah, I found that tricky, to be fair.
But I mean, I think it just, we're all so like schooled to think in this way.
Yeah.
To think, I mean, first of all, it's the idea that slimmer is healthier. Like, you could be slim because you're not eating, because
Yeah.
you're not sleeping, you're plagued with anxiety. But if you're slim, people think, oh, it's because you're healthy and the weight's dropping off. Like, it's just nonsense. And actually trying to that consciously go back to thinking about health beyond what the body looks like,
Yeah.
and caring for people like on a holistic level, because we know about the stats on Black women's maternal health and the mental health
Absolutely.
of women after they give birth to children. Like, we know that stuff is major, postpartum depression, all those things. And when
Mm,
we can boil this down so much to a place of, what does your body look like? That will tell me if you're well. And that's the thing that gets celebrated. So that is so interesting, but sad in a way that has been, we all experience, with so many people have experienced
yeah.
as well, I think. And people say it to be kind, but it is just
They
telling
are. They're
in
trying
terms
to
of,
compliment you, but
yeah,
at
of
the same time, it can
course.
have that adverse effect of, I
Yes.
don't feel great,
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
feel great.
yeah.
Like, I remember seeing a lot of women talk about postpartum depression before I had rain. So for the life of me, I couldn't think what would trigger it. I used to sit there and think,
Mm,
oh, but you've just had this lovely baby, like this miracle. How does postpartum depression even come into thought, Salah? it had me mind blown to the point of when I had rain and I had to put active things in place to make sure my mind didn't go to that place. So for me, it was going to yoga when the doctor was like, okay, you're ready to move again. It was dancing. It was talking in safe spaces. It was getting outside. And Sally, if I didn't put those things in place, I reckon I would have been one of those moms to go,
Wow.
I'm suffering.
Yeah.
And because it's such a real thing, and
Yes.
I feel like we normalize quickly getting back to normal as opposed of taking that healing time and then, okay, what do I need to put in place for me to make sure I don't slip?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
exactly
No,
good then talking
it's
about that.
just it's just so major. It is so major. And I think we've gone all the way into the baby's mother's conversation
Yeah.
now, but it really makes me think about how we just talk so normally about having
Yeah.
babies, going back to normal, and not really thinking about the real holistic impact that has on a woman,
Yeah.
and the kind of holistic care therefore that a woman needs once she's gone through that to recover.
Yeah.
But as you were talking, that also made me think about how so often our womanhood gets tied up with having children at the same time, that like for women who don't want children or are struggling to conceive,
Yeah.
that their whole womanhood gets called into question sometimes. And that's not even sometimes
Oh,
externally, sometimes that can be in your own head. That,
yeah.
you know, and I heard a woman say this once, that she was struggling with fertility issues and she felt as if she wasn't really a woman because she hadn't had a
Wow.
baby. And it made me so sad, because I thought on the
Yeah.
one hand, I get what you mean, because
Mhm.
we have the body parts that mean that we can technically
Yeah.
get pregnant. And so we want to be able to do that if that's
Mhm.
what we want. You know, a lot of women do. And yet to feel as if your whole identity is tied up in your ability to conceive a child,
Yeah.
bring that child to term, give birth to them, just felt like such a reduction of like what a woman can be.
Yeah.
And of course, for many women, having a baby is so important, but it made me think about what kind of relationship do you end up having with your body if the primary thing that makes you who you are is that this body can produce a baby.
Yeah.
And what does that do? And I think that when I think about this, like, theologically for a moment, I think, like, yes, our bodies matter as like a core
Yeah.
part of who we are, but we're not just our bodies, and
Exactly.
we're not just what our bodies can produce, and that our value is beyond that. And so I think keeping so much of that in mind as well with this conversation is just so important.
Do you know what I think about when you say that, Sal? I'm trying to think what scripture it is. I'm not even going to try and quote because I'm really bad at things like that.
Go on.
But it's in Is it in Genesis? I'm not sure, where they talk about God saying, sow, replenish,
Yes,
grow,
yes, yes, yes.
and everyone likens that to I need to build a family. And I honestly think it's one of the most misperceived parts of the Bible, period, because people see it and go, oh my gosh, okay, now I need to start a family. Now I need to replenish the earth. Now I need to, multiply.
Yes.
But so many women are pregnant with businesses, they're pregnant with ideas, they're pregnant with podcasts, they're pregnant with
Mm,
books, they're pregnant with a vision or a legacy that isn't tied to childbirth. And
yeah.
honestly, it really upsets me when, like you said, people feel less of a woman because they're not able to conceive. Or I've got friends who are like, I just don't want kids. Like,
Mm,
that looks nice, mom, but yeah, I'm just good over here
yeah.
just to be with me and my partner. And I think that's absolutely fine, because you could be pregnant with something else, which is exactly what God has called you for at this time, which the world still
Yes.
needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could talk about that
It's
all
so
day.
true, Ma. And it's funny because I was thinking about this a little bit the other day as well, that sense
Mhm.
of how, you know, for a woman using her body to grow a child and have a baby is
Yeah,
like seen as like the pinnacle of womanhood. And as you say,
yes,
like, there's so much capacity to nurture and create in
yeah,
so many ways. And that's not even to talk about women who adopt and foster babies and children,
exactly.
like so many
Yeah,
ways in which you can mother without giving birth to a child, so many ways
absolutely.
you can create and have family and community that extend
Yeah,
beyond
and
just
just
your
be
own children.
maternal. That's it.
Exactly. And so many ways in which men can do the same. Like, I think we make this
Yeah,
kind of birthing thing a very
yeah,
female centered
we
thing, but
do.
it's like for a man who creates and births a business, you know, like what does that, is that a similar metaphor? Is it a similar thing we can talk about? You know, men nurture in so many ways as well as women. And I think that the whole thing around like womanhood and what it is to be a man, I think we've thought too often in kind of binaries there, and there's so much richness to be explored when we start to imagine all the different ways in which we can nurture and give birth to things in the world. And that's not to take away women from women giving birth and being pregnant at all, but I think it can be such a richer and more expanded understanding of that includes so many different people.
So me and my husband went to the baby show, and there was probably, I want to say, over 200 stalls there, and we found one stall for men. Our mind was absolutely blown. Everything was for women, everything was for the mom. And I remember him looking at me and going, where's the support for the dads?
Yeah, like how does he learn how to be a dad when there's no one's actually doing it, creating any resources?
Nothing out there for the dads. And if there is, it's very, very, very few and far between.
Yes.
It goes off the back of what you were saying of, okay, we know us women are great, we know this, but let's not take away from the nurturing side of them as well, that needs embracing, that needs celebrating.
Yeah, man, that's so true. And I feel like we've covered so many different bits in this podcast. And actually, as we've gone through it, I'm now thinking we could do a whole one on like motherhood and childbirth, and a whole other one on fertility issues and all those. And we have so many different topics to try to cover, I think, in the future. But I think we've covered so much good stuff, particularly around how we relate to our bodies as women. And it's been such a rich conversation.
I know it's going to help and inspire a lot of women that will be listening.
Hopefully. It really will. It really will. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for your time. You can go and have a rest now, or maybe not a rest.
No, Sal, I would definitely be resting. I haven't got you know what my husband does if I'm not resting? He hides my devices. So my laptop will go missing, my iPad will go missing. Trust me, I love it.
Listen, this reminds me, and I wanted to say this when you first spoke about Omar, talking to you about whose rules are you trying to live by? Like that wanted me to make me say how important having a good partner is, like in this whole journey as women, as we explore our lives. Like it's better to have no partner than a useless one, or one that's going to be taken away from your well-being. So I love to hear about these examples of really healthy, enriching relationships where you're like, this happens, and this is what, if we are looking for partnership, this is what we need, is partners who will say, he will encourage us in our growth, in our journey, and hide our devices when we don't know how to rest. Shout out to Omar and all the good partners out there.
Love that.
Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, Sal. Thank you
so much.